The galaxy had known about humans for 300 years. In that time, every species with ears had learned one simple truth about the creatures from Earth. They were loud. Not just loud in the way of spoken words. Humans were loud in everything they did. Their ships roared through space with engines that other races considered wasteful and primitive. Their colonies never slept. Construction machines worked through the night. Music played from every building. People argued in the streets about politics and sports and things that did not matter. Ambassador of the species had spent 40 years working with humans. She had 4 eyes and skin the color of dark water, and she had seen many strange things in her long life. But nothing was stranger than humans. She remembered her first visit to Earth. The noise had almost driven her mad. Cars honked on the streets below her window. Aircraft screamed overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a crowd was cheering at a sporting event. Children laughed in a park. Dogs barked. People shouted into small devices they held against their ears. "How do you live like this?" she had asked her human guide, a young man named Thomas. Thomas had looked confused. "Live like what?" "The noise, the constant noise. Does it never stop?" Thomas had laughed. It was a warm sound full of genuine joy. "This is pretty quiet, actually. You should hear it during a holiday." Had not believed him then, she believed him now. The Galactic Conquered was a collection of 207 spacefaring species. They had rules about many things. They had rules about trade and travel and weapons and territory. But they had no rules about noise, because before humans arrived, noise had never been a problem. The elder races of the galaxy were quiet creatures. They spoke in whispers and valued silence as a form of respect. The Dominion communicated through subtle color changes in their skin. They used vibrations too low for most species to hear. Even the youngest races in the Conquered understood that space was vast and empty and quiet, and civilized beings should be the same. Then humans came. Their first message to the galaxy had been a golden disc attached to a primitive probe. It contained music and greetings in many languages and images of Earth and its people. The Conquered scientists who studied it were puzzled. Why would anyone send such a thing into the void? Who were they trying to reach? The answer came when humans developed faster-than-light travel and burst onto the galactic stage like children running into a quiet library. They wanted to meet everyone. They wanted to trade with everyone. They wanted to talk to everyone all at once about everything. The Conquered did not know what to do with them. Humans were not the strongest species. They were larger and more powerful. Humans were not the species. They had been solving mathematical problems since before humans learned to walk upright. Humans were not the oldest species. Dozens of races had been traveling between stars while humans were still living in caves. But humans were the most persistent species the galaxy had ever seen. They did not conquer worlds. They settled them, built cities on them, filled them with noise and life and chaos. They did not demand respect from elder races. They simply kept showing up, kept talking, kept asking questions until the elder races grew tired and answered just to make them go away. Within 100 years, humans had spread across 300 worlds. Within 200 years, they were the most common sight in galactic shipping lanes. Within 300 years, it was hard to find a corner of civilized space that did not have at least a few humans making noise in it. The Conquered monitoring stations tracked electromagnetic signals across the galaxy. It was their way of keeping watch on all the species under their care. For most species, these signals were faint and occasional. A transmission here, a communication there. For humans, the signals never stopped. Earth alone produced 40,000 distinct transmissions every single day. Television programs, radio stations, satellite communications, phone calls, internet data, emergency broadcasts, music streams, news reports, arguments between neighbors using wireless devices. It was an endless river of noise flowing out into the universe. And that was just Earth. Human colonies were almost as bad. Human ships broadcast music while they traveled between stars. Human space stations played announcements on loop. Even human scientists, alone in remote research outposts, kept audio logs that they transmitted back to Earth for no reason other than to hear their own voices echo in the void. Some species found this annoying. Others found it amusing. A few found it disturbing, though they could not explain why. High Counselor of the was one of the disturbed ones. He had lived for 200 years and had studied humans more closely than any other member of the Conquered. He had read their history. He had watched their wars. He had seen what they did to each other before they reached the stars. Humans, he knew, were capable of terrible things. They had weapons that could crack planets. They had killed billions of their own kind in conflicts over resources and ideas and simple hatred. They had nearly destroyed themselves a dozen times before they finally achieved peace. But they had achieved peace. That was the remarkable thing. Despite everything in their nature, humans had chosen to be better. They had put away their weapons and reached for the stars with open hands instead of closed fists. Believed this was genuine. He believed humans truly wanted peace. But he also remembered something a human diplomat had told him once, late at night, after too many drinks. "We're loud because we're happy," the diplomat had said. "We make noise because we want to, we fill the silence because we can, but don't ever mistake our noise for weakness. Don't ever think we've forgotten what we are." "And what are you?" had asked. The diplomat had smiled, but there was something cold behind his eyes. "We're the species that almost wiped itself out and decided not to. We're the species that chose to be peaceful when we didn't have to be. We're the species that makes noise because the alternative." He had trailed off, staring into his drink. "The alternative," prompted. The diplomat looked up. "The alternative is silence, and when humanity goes silent, it means we've stopped choosing peace. It means we've remembered what we really are." Had not understood then. He thought it was just human dramatics, the kind of exaggeration they were famous for. He would understand soon enough. The galaxy was about to learn what humanity's silence meant. And they would never forget the lesson. The first sign came at 3:47 Galactic Standard Time. A young technician named was working the night shift at Monitoring Station 7. It was boring work. He spent most nights watching screens full of numbers and signal patterns, making sure nothing unusual happened in his sector of space. His sector included Earth. Had grown used to the endless stream of human signals. They were like background noise now, so constant that he barely noticed them anymore. Television programs he did not understand. Music that hurt his ears. Millions of voices speaking at once, day and night, without pause. So when the signals stopped, noticed immediately. He stared at his screen. The numbers were wrong. The patterns were wrong. Everything was wrong. Where there had been 40,000 signals, there was now nothing. Zero, complete silence from the Sol system. Ran a diagnostic on his equipment. Everything was working correctly. He checked his connections, all fine. He recalibrated his sensors, still nothing. He contacted Monitoring Station 6, which covered the space near Earth. "Are you seeing this?" he asked. "Seeing what?" came the reply. "Earth, the signals, they're gone." There was a long pause, then, "That's impossible." But it was not impossible, it was happening. Within minutes, every monitoring station in the sector was reporting the same thing. Earth had gone dark. Not a single transmission was coming from the human. No television, no radio, no satellite communications, nothing. The Conquered Council was alerted. Emergency protocols were activated. Long-range scanners were pointed at the Sol system to gather more information. What they found made no sense. Earth was still there. Its cities were still standing. Its power grids were still running. Lights were on in buildings across the planet. But no one was transmitting. No one was communicating. 17 billion humans on that single world, and not one of them was making a sound. "Perhaps a technical failure," suggested a counselor. "Some kind of electromagnetic event that disrupted their equipment." But that theory died within hours. Reports began arriving from across the galaxy. Human colonies were going silent. Human trading posts had stopped responding. Human ships were powering down their engines and drifting in shipping lanes, their lights still on, but their communications dead. On the conquered station Nexus Prime, hundreds of human residents simply stopped what they were doing. They put down their tools. They ended their conversations mid-sentence. They walked away from their jobs and their meals and their friends. They returned to their quarters and closed their doors. A security officer tried to stop one of them, a woman he had known for years. "Maria, what is happening? Where are you going?" Maria looked at him with eyes that seemed to see something far away. "Home," she said simply. Then she walked past him without another word. The same scene played out on every station, every colony, every ship across 300 worlds. Humans stopped talking. Humans stopped moving. Humans went still and quiet like they had never been before. Ambassador watched it happen on her station. She saw human diplomats walk out of important meetings without explanation. She saw human merchants close their shops in the middle of the day. She saw human children stop playing and stand motionless in the corridors, their faces blank, their eyes distant. It was the children that frightened her the most. Human children were the loudest creatures in the galaxy. They laughed and screamed and cried and shouted every moment of every day. To see them standing silent and still was wrong in a way that made her 4 eyes water. She tried to speak to one of them, a little boy named James who lived on the station with his parents. "James, are you all right? Can you hear me?" James looked up at her. His eyes were clear and focused, but there was something behind them that did not recognize, something old and cold and patient. "We're listening," James said. His voice was calm, steady, nothing like a child's voice should be. "All of us, we're all listening now." "Listening to what?" James tilted his head. "To what was done, to what was planned, we need to hear it, all of us, together." Then he turned and walked away, leaving standing alone in the corridor with a chill running down her spine. The silence lasted for 2 days. 2 days of nothing. No human voices, no human music, no human laughter or arguments or complaints. 2 days of empty frequencies and still bodies and eyes that looked inward instead of outward. The galaxy had never known such silence from humanity. It was unnatural. It was terrifying. It was like watching a star go dark and wondering if it would ever shine again. Some species tried to take advantage. The collective attempted to claim a human trading post that had gone inactive. They sent a ship to investigate, planning to seize the valuable cargo stored there. The ship never returned. Its last transmission was a single image, a human woman standing in the airlock, her face expressionless, her hand on a weapon. No one else tried to interfere with human territory after that. The Conquered Council met in emergency session, trying to understand what was happening. They debated and argued and speculated, but no one had answers. No one knew why the humans had gone silent. No one knew what they were waiting for. Only High Counselor remained quiet during the debates. He sat in his chair with his 4 eyes closed, remembering that conversation from years ago, remembering what the human diplomat had told him. When humanity goes silent, it means we've stopped choosing peace. He opened his eyes and looked at his fellow counselors, still arguing about technical malfunctions and cultural rituals and diplomatic misunderstandings. They did not understand. They did not want to understand. But understood. He understood that something terrible had happened to make humanity go quiet. He understood that 17 billion humans across 300 worlds were not malfunctioning or meditating or performing some strange ritual. They were preparing for something that required perfect unity, perfect focus, perfect silence. And when they finished preparing, when they finally broke their silence and spoke again, knew that the galaxy would learn exactly what humanity was capable of. He only hoped the galaxy would survive the lesson. On the morning of the 3rd day, a single transmission broke the silence. It came from Earth, broadcast on every frequency in every language known to the conquered. It was not a greeting, it was not a plea, it was not an explanation. It was a promise, and it changed everything. The truth came to light on the 2nd day of the silence. A surveyor ship had been exploring a dead system at the edge of known space. The crew was looking for mineral deposits, nothing more, but they found something else entirely. Hidden in the wreckage of an old asteroid mining station, they discovered a laboratory. And in that laboratory, they found evidence of the most terrible crime in galactic history. The contingency. There were a coalition of 12 species who had grown to hate humanity. They were older races, proud races, species who had ruled their corners of the galaxy for thousands of years before humans ever looked up at the stars. They hated humans for being loud. They hated humans for being everywhere. They hated humans for treating ancient species like equals instead of superiors. They hated humans for their chaos, their persistence, their refusal to know their place. Most of all, they hated humans for thriving. They had expected humans to fail. They had expected these noisy, chaotic creatures to destroy themselves like so many young species before them. But humans did not destroy themselves. They spread and grew and became impossible to ignore. So they decided to do what humanity had failed to do. They would destroy humanity themselves. The laboratory contained records of everything. Years of research, decades of planning, hundreds of scientists from 12 different species all working toward a single goal, a bioweapon designed to kill humans. Not just some humans, all humans. The weapon was a virus, engineered to target human DNA specifically. It would spread through the air, through water, through physical contact. It would infect every human it touched and begin destroying them from the inside out. Slowly at first, then faster and faster until nothing remained but empty shells. The estimated casualties were written in cold, clinical terms. 4 billion dead in the first month, 8 billion by the end of the first year, total extinction within a decade. They had planned to release the virus on Earth's 3 largest cities. From there, it would spread to the orbital stations, then to the colony ships, then to every human settlement in the galaxy. They had set a date. They had prepared delivery systems. They had been 6 hours away from launching the attack. 6 hours, but they had underestimated humanity. Human intelligence operatives were everywhere in the galaxy. They worked as merchants and diplomats and engineers. They listened and watched and reported back to Earth. They had networks that the never suspected, connections that ran through every species and every sector. One of those operatives had discovered the plot. He was a man named David, working as a maintenance technician on a station. He had found the wrong file on the wrong computer at exactly the right time. He had transmitted his discovery to Earth 18 hours before the silence began. The surveyor crew brought their evidence to the conquered council. They expected shock. They expected outrage. They expected immediate action against the... What they got was fear. Because now the council understood why humanity had gone silent. Now they understood what was happening across 300 worlds. Humanity was being told. Every human everywhere was learning what they had planned. They were hearing about the virus. They were seeing the projected casualties. They were understanding with perfect clarity that 12 species had conspired to murder their children, their parents, their friends, their entire civilization. And they were being asked a question. High Counselor explained it to the council in a voice that shook with terror. Humans have a concept they call total war, he said. It is a kind of conflict where all rules are abandoned, where civilians and soldiers are treated the same, where the only goal is the complete destruction of the enemy. We know of war, said a counselor. All species know of war. You do not know of war like this, replied. When humans wage total war, they do not stop until the enemy no longer exists, not defeated, not conquered, erased. They burned entire cities on their own planet. They developed weapons that could kill millions in a single flash. They invented horrors that still haunt their memories. He paused, his 4 eyes dark with understanding. For 300 years, humans have chosen not to wage total war. They have been peaceful because they wanted to be peaceful. They have been loud and chaotic and friendly because they decided to be those things. And now, asked Ambassador, now they are being asked to decide again. Every human across every world is being given the same information and asked the same question. What should we do? The council chamber fell silent. They are voting, continued. Not with ballots or speeches, with their silence, with their stillness. They are reaching consensus across 17 billion minds, and when they finish. He did not need to complete the sentence. The leadership had fled to their home systems when the silence began. They knew they had been discovered. They believed they had time to prepare defenses, to negotiate, to explain. They did not understand what was coming. No one in the galaxy understood what was coming. On the morning of the 3rd day, the silence ended. A single transmission broke through, broadcast from Earth on every frequency in every language. The voice was calm, steady. It belonged to a woman, though her name was not given. She spoke for all of humanity, and her words were simple. We came to the stars with open hands. We offered friendship to every species we met. We asked only for the right to exist among you, to trade with you, to learn from you. In return, 12 of your nations conspired to murder our children in their cradles. A pause. When she spoke again, there was something cold in her voice, something ancient and terrible and patient. We gave you 3 days of silence, 3 days to learn what was planned, 3 days to understand what almost happened. Now our silence ends. Another pause. We have reached consensus. All of us, every human on every world, we are in perfect agreement for the first time in our species' history. Her next words were the most terrifying sentence the galaxy had ever heard. The wish to erase humanity from existence. We have decided to return the favor. The transmission ended, and across 300 worlds, 17 billion humans opened their eyes and began to move. The galaxy had seen human ships before. They were common in every shipping lane, every trade route, every corner of civilized space. Merchants and explorers and colonists flying in all directions at once, never in formation, never organized. The galaxy had never seen human warships. They emerged from hidden shipyards across 100 systems. Ships that no one knew existed. Ships that had been built in secret, maintained in silence, crewed by soldiers the galaxy never suspected. The humans called it the Silent Fleet. For 300 years, humanity had shown the galaxy only one face. The loud face, the friendly face, the chaotic, disorganized, harmless face. But behind that face, they had prepared for the day when friendship was not enough. The day had come. Commander stood on the bridge of the battleship unconquered. She was 47 years old, and she had spent her entire adult life training for a war she hoped would never happen. Now it was happening, and she felt nothing but cold, focused determination. "All ships report ready," said her communications officer. Nodded, "Transmit the coordinates, we move together." Across the galaxy, human ships powered up their engines at the same moment. Military vessels and converted merchant ships, massive carriers and small attack craft. They moved as one, a single organism with a single purpose. The conquered had never seen anything like it. "How are they coordinating?" asked Ambassador, watching the fleet movements on her display. "They have no central command structure. They have no military hierarchy. How are they moving in perfect unison?" High Counselor watched beside her. "They don't need a central command," he said quietly. "They all know what needs to be done. They all agreed. Every human ship, every human captain, every human soldier has the same information and the same goal." "That's impossible. No species can coordinate like that without orders." "Humans can when they choose to." The first world to fall was called Prime. It was a beautiful planet, home to 3 billion citizens. It had oceans and forests and cities that had stood for 10,000 years. The human fleet arrived at dawn. They had defenses, orbital platforms with heavy weapons, a fleet of warships that had protected their space for centuries. They believed they could fight. They believed they could hold. They were wrong. The human ships did not attack like any fleet the galaxy had seen before. They did not form battle lines or exchange fire at range. They came in fast, too fast, ignoring their own casualties to close the distance. And when they got close, they deployed weapons that should not have existed. Kinetic bombardment platforms launched metal rods from orbit. Simple weapons, nothing but dense metal moving at incredible speeds. They hit the surface like the fists of an angry god, each impact releasing more energy than a nuclear bomb. Antimatter warheads detonated in the upper atmosphere, turning the sky to fire. Targeted strikes hit military installations, government buildings, research facilities. The humans knew exactly where to hit. Their intelligence was perfect. Their aim was perfect. Their fury was perfect. The commander sent a distress signal to the conquered. We surrender, call them off, we will face trial, we will accept punishment, please." The conquered transmitted the surrender to the human fleet. The human fleet did not respond. "They're not listening," said. "Why aren't they listening?" His voice was heavy with sorrow. "Because humans are not fighting a war. They are not seeking victory or territory or concessions. They are making an example." An example. The plan to erase humanity from existence. Every man, woman, and child, no survivors, no mercy, no future. Closed his eyes. The humans are returning the favor. This is not conquest. This is extinction. Prime burned for 3 days. When the fires finally faded, nothing remained. No cities, no forests, no life. The planet was a blackened sphere, silent and dead, a tomb for 3 billion souls. The human fleet moved on. One by one, the worlds fell. Each attack was the same, swift, overwhelming, total. The humans did not negotiate. They did not accept surrenders. They did not take prisoners. They erased. Some tried to flee. They loaded their families onto ships and ran for neutral space, hopping to escape the storm. Human vessels hunted them down with cold efficiency. No ship was too small to pursue. No refugee was too insignificant to track. "Why?" screamed a captain as human ships surrounded his transport. "There are children on board, innocents. Why are you doing this?" The human response came through every speaker on his ship. It was not a voice. It was a recording, playing on loop, the same words that had been broadcast across the galaxy. "We came in peace. We offered friendship. You plan to murder our children. Now face the consequences." The transport was destroyed. The conquered council watched in horror as the campaign continued. 12 worlds, 100 billion lives, species that had existed for reduced to nothing. Some counselors demanded intervention. They wanted to send conquered fleets to stop the humans, to save what remained of the refused. "If we intervene, they will turn on us," he said. "This fury is focused, directed, controlled. It has a target and a limit. If we become part of that target, there will be no limit. We cannot simply watch genocide happen. We must, because the alternative is being added to the list of species humanity has decided to erase." His voice was quiet but firm. "They brought this on themselves. They threatened human existence. This is the response. When it is over, humanity will stop, but only when it is over." The campaign lasted 72 hours. 72 hours of fire and death and silence. The humans did not celebrate their victories. They did not mourn their losses. They simply continued, methodical and unstoppable, until the job was done. When the last world fell, when the last ship was destroyed, when the last member of 12 species breathed their last breath, the human fleet stopped. They powered down their weapons. They formed into columns. They began the long journey home. And as they traveled, they transmitted one final message to the galaxy. The same words, over and over, in every language. "We did not want this. You made us into this. Remember." The galaxy remembered. The galaxy would never forget. On the 4th day after the silence began, the noise returned. Human radio stations started broadcasting again. Music filled the frequencies that had been empty for 3 days. Television programs resumed their endless cycles of entertainment and news. Satellites hummed with data. Phone calls connected across continents. The humans were talking again. Ambassador did not know what to make of it. She stood on the observation deck of her station, watching human residents walk past like nothing had happened. They laughed. They argued. They complained about the food and gossiped about their neighbors. 3 days ago, these same people had walked out of her life without a word. They had gone silent and still like machines waiting for instructions. They had participated in the erasure of 100 billion lives across 12 worlds. Now they were discussing sports. A human merchant named stopped beside her. He was a large man with a friendly face someone had known for years. They had shared meals together. They had talked about their families. "Ambassador," he said with a warm smile, "beautiful view today, isn't it?" Stared at him. "How can you act like nothing happened?" Smile faded slightly. "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean, the silence, the destruction, 100 billion dead. 12 species erased from existence. How can you stand there and talk about the view?" Was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. "Because we have to," he said. "Because if we don't go back to normal, we'll stay in that dark place forever, and nobody wants that, not us, not the galaxy." "But how do you just forget?" "We don't forget." His eyes met hers and for a moment saw something behind them, something old and tired and sad. "We never forget. We carry it with us, every one of us. But we choose not to let it define us. We choose to be loud and chaotic and alive because the alternative is being quiet and focused and deadly." He looked out at the stars. "We made a choice once, a long time ago. We chose to be better than our nature, to be peaceful when we could be violent, to be kind when we could be cruel. This week, we had to make a different choice. But now it's over and we're choosing again." "Choosing what?" "To be the humans you knew before, the noisy ones, the annoying ones, the ones who never shut up and always want to be friends." His smile returned, though it was smaller now. "We like those humans better. We hope you do too." He patted her shoulder gently and walked away, whistling a tune she did not recognize. Stood alone for a long time after that. The Galactic Concord met in special session 1 week after the silence ended. Every species sent representatives. Every counselor attended. The chamber was full and the mood was grave. They had come to discuss what to do about humanity. Some demanded punishment. The humans had committed genocide, they argued. They had destroyed entire species without trial or mercy. They should be sanctioned, isolated, contained before they could threaten anyone else. Others counseled caution. The humans had been provoked, they pointed out. They had planned to destroy them first. The response was extreme, yes, but perhaps understandable. High Counselor listened to both sides. When the debate finally quieted, he rose to speak. I have studied humans for 200 years, he said. I have read their history. I have learned their languages. I have tried to understand how they think, what drives them, what makes them different from every other species in this galaxy. He paused, looking around the chamber. Before this week, I thought I understood them. I was wrong. None of us understood them. We saw the noise, the chaos, the friendly faces, and we thought that was all they were. We forgot what they told us from the beginning. What did they tell us? Asked a young counselor. That they chose to be peaceful, that their kindness was a decision, not a nature, that behind all that noise was something else, something they kept hidden because they did not want to use it. His voice was heavy. The forced them to remember what they were, and what they are, counselors, is the most dangerous species this galaxy has ever produced. Then we should destroy them while we can. We cannot destroy them, shook his head. That is the lesson learned. That is the lesson we must never forget. Any attempt to harm humanity will result in exactly what we saw this week. Perfect unity, perfect focus, perfect destruction. Then what do we do? Was silent for a moment. Then he smiled, a tired smile full of hard-earned wisdom. We let them be loud. The chamber erupted in confused murmurs, raised his hand for silence. We let them be loud, he repeated. We let them fill our frequencies with their music and their arguments and their endless chatter. We let them spread across the stars, making friends and making noise wherever they go, because the noise means they are happy. The noise means they are peaceful. The noise means they are choosing to be the humans we can live with. He leaned forward, his 4 eyes intense. Humanity's noise is not a weakness. It is a gift. It is their way of telling us that they mean no harm. And the moment that noise stops, the moment humanity falls silent again, that is when we should be afraid. Because silence means they have stopped choosing peace. Silence means they are preparing for war. The chamber was quiet. My recommendation, continued, is that we establish a monitoring system, not to spy on humans, but to listen to them, to track their signals across the galaxy. If human transmissions ever drop below normal levels, we must know immediately. We must have time to find out why, to fix whatever has gone wrong before the silence becomes complete. The recommendation was adopted unanimously. In the years that followed, the galaxy changed. The Concord implemented new protocols. Early warning systems were installed at every monitoring station. Diplomatic channels to humanity were expanded and strengthened. And in the darkest corners of the galactic archives, a single phrase was recorded in every language, taught to every species that achieved interstellar travel. A warning, passed down through generations, never to be forgotten. Let humanity be loud. Their silence is the last thing you will ever hear. Ambassador retired from diplomatic service 10 years after the silence. On her last day, she visited the human section of the station one final time. The noise was as overwhelming as ever. Music and laughter and arguments and life. She found in his shop, haggling with a customer over the price of imported goods. He saw her and grinned, the same friendly grin she remembered from before everything changed. Ambassador, come to say goodbye. Yes, she hesitated. I wanted to thank you. Thank me for what? For being loud, for choosing to be loud even after everything that happened, for giving the galaxy a chance to live with humanity instead of dying by humanity. Smile softened. He reached out and took her hand, a gesture of warmth and connection. That's the deal, Ambassador. We'll keep being loud and you keep giving us reasons to stay that way. Works out for everyone. Squeezed his hand and nodded. Outside the shop, human children were chasing each other through the corridors, shrieking with laughter. Somewhere, music was playing. Somewhere, people were arguing about nothing important. The noise of humanity filled the station, filled the sector, filled the galaxy. and in that beautiful, chaotic, endless noise, heard something she had never recognized before. She heard peace. She heard humanity choosing to be something other than what it was capable of being. And she was grateful. The galaxy was grateful. For as long as the noise continued, there was hope. And so humanity kept talking, kept laughing, kept filling the universe with sound and life and chaos. Because they knew what waited in the silence. And they never wanted to go back there again.